How's it going, you guys? So I really don't know what I'm going to name this video. Maybe sarcastically I'll name it Plant Defense Chemicals, the deadly substances that'll fuck your ass up. Something to that extent, I don't know. Probably demonetized right now for saying that in the first opening minutes of the video, but I don't really care so much. But this video, we're going to be discussing, once again, we're going to be discussing plant defense chemicals and why you really shouldn't be going too crazy, like telling people to avoid them at all costs, okay? With some exceptions and caveats. And in fact, some people should probably be including some of these plant defense chemicals in their nutrition routine if they want to extend their life and, more importantly, optimize their well-being and their overall performance. So while I make this video, I'm going to be consuming a nice steaming mug full of plant defense chemicals. This is actually a highly revered longevity and health tonic known as gynostemma from traditional Chinese medicine. It is amazing. And I'm drinking it through a kind of like spoon straw that's I drink, yerba mate through, a bombisha. All right. So I'm making this video because, I've made videos talking about this in depth, talking about the studies and the science and healthy user bias and this and that pretty extensively for the past year, really, okay? But I'm getting new subscribers now that are like commenting on my videos, telling me, all roots are deadly and they're going to fuck you up, and making kind of like generalized absolute statements that are not actually grounded in reality and generally just sound like someone who's like repeating everything they heard from like Paul Saladino or something. And to me, it really cannot help but laugh when I read these comments because, well, number one, I was carnivore for like strict carnivore for around 2 years, give or take. I started a strict carnivore diet in December of 2018, and I stayed relatively strict all the way up through 2019 and 2020. And sure, I had a couple of kind of periods where I experimented with different things, but that was mostly strict ketogenic carnivore for the most part. I even competed in Muay Thai on a strict carnivore diet. So, and one of the people who actually convinced me to try it was Sean Baker, of course, but also Paul Saladino. And I was really, really into Paul Saladino and his videos and the studies that he presented. Shared a lot of really good science and things like that, especially on polyphenol research and some of the potential negative side effects, potential lowering of blood antioxidant levels and things like that. I was like really into Paul Saladino's work. I have his book. I have 2 editions of his book, The Carnivore Code. So, and I own shirts, like carnivore diet shirts that I've worn in some of my videos before. However, I am a rational human who doesn't just repeat dogma because it's something that I want to believe is true. And I have to kind of break things down in a more rational fashion. I'm not dogmatic about, plant foods. I think that, so-called, plant defense chemicals, polyphenols, and things like that. Like, there's something you need to consider, but the vast majority of humans probably are not going to be negatively affected. It definitely does not influence nutrient absorption the way people act like it does. And generally speaking, unless you have an autoimmune condition, you probably don't need to avoid it, okay? So, again, I've made so many videos on this already, but one of them is called, like, Carnivore is Not Magic or something like that. It was released in the last 3 months or so. All right. So, lots of things to look at here. So, first of all, okay, so plant defense chemicals are not just bad, okay? So obviously there are herbivorous animals who literally eat nothing but plants that are full of these plant defense chemicals, okay? I know humans are not herbivores. I made videos like jokingly, like, basically debunking things that some of these, dumb vegan doctors who claim humans are herbivores. I debunk that shit all the time. But the point is, plant defense chemicals are not just universally bad. Herbivorous animals consume them as a major part of their diet, and they're fine. And even though humans don't have like 3 stomachs, there's a lot of evidence that actually shows a number of benefits from various different types of polyphenols. One of the biggest things about all of this is that, so first of all, I saw a couple videos by a YouTube channel. They're vegan. They're called Plant Jumpers. Okay, and by no means am I vegan, and I don't think you need like polyphenols in your diet. That's just fucking stupid. However, they made a video kind of like highlighting the lifespans and the causes of death of a variety of different health influencers. And it's interesting just how many low-carb and ketogenic type health influencers had a relatively either average or short lifespan. And, there's obviously people like that in all aspects. But there's also exceptions to the rules, like Stephen Finney, Jeff Volek, Eric Westman. They're all in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. There's a lot of them as well. But basically, the lifespan of a lot of these low-carbers is not that great. It doesn't mean that low-carb diets are bad per se, but it's just kind of like, obviously its plant chemicals are not at play in these cases. A lot of these people don't really eat a lot of plant foods. Now, on the other side of things, you have these vegan influencers who tend to live, in their 80s, 90s, and 100s without chronic diseases. Now, are these people the perfect example of glowing health? Probably not. And by no means am I trying to tell people that like you need to be vegan or that meat is bad or anything like that. But all I'm saying is that if plant defense chemicals were as deadly as people say, there wouldn't be this like dramatic, you wouldn't see a large amount of like plant-based people, plant-based gurus, plant-based experts. You wouldn't see a lot of these blue zones who eat meat and organs and stuff like that. They really do. But they also eat a large amount of like herbal teas and polyphenols as a major mainstay of their diets. And you wouldn't see in population studies, some intervention trials, I'll get to that. But you wouldn't see in population studies there's a dose-dependent increase in positive health outcomes, where basically the more fruits and vegetables a person eats, the healthier and healthier they become, supposedly. Again, healthy user bias is at play. It's not that these fruits and vegetables are necessarily causing their health to improve per se, but to say that these plant defense chemicals are, just a net negative, and then you look at, you would see that. You would not see the more fruits and vegetables someone eats, the better their health outcomes, okay? What this tells us is that there's more significant things that promote health, better health, than like avoiding anti-nutrients in plant foods. It's just silly. And of course there is a biotin binding protein, avidin, in egg whites. It's supposedly an anti-nutrient. I consume raw eggs all the time. I'm like not scared of anti-nutrients, but anyway, so there's this person, this subscriber. He's like, yeah, basically, the anti-nutrients, be aware, be doomed. You're doomed or whatever. And the thing is, like I had said, so berry, for example, never really became a problem, vitamin B1 deficiency, until brown rice started to become refined. And keep in mind, the Japanese culture, the Asian culture has been eating rice for a long time, like thousands of years. They've also been consuming tonic herbs as medicine, or not tonic herbs as health and longevity boosting tonics that have been documented for thousands of years, improving the health and the longevity of humans, and we now know through scientific research that it's these polyphenols and these plant defense chemicals that are giving them their benefits, okay? And, roots like ginseng, for example, with ginsenosides. And what I'm drinking, gynosema, has a saponins in it known as gypenosides, similar to ginseng saponins, has 80 of them. They discovered that animals that were, the population of people and the animals that were consuming this plant actually had an abnormally, like a dramatic increase. Like they had I think it was like 80% of their population were of their elderly population lived to be like 100 or something like that. Something crazy, some abnormal improvement in longevity came from the region where gynosema was a primary health beverage. Instead of green tea, people are drinking gynosema. And then, of course, the long history of Asian cultures, at least in the last 100 years, having long health, lifespans and better health outcomes and things. And like green tea and these odd like plant foods, as well as odd animal foods as well, like insects and bugs and liver and organs and stuff, and raw fish and raw eggs and bull testicles. Like these have been a part of Asian culture's nutrition plans for a long time. But a large amount of plant defense chemicals that these people are so scared of has been a part of their culture. And these are foods that people consume as health tonics, okay? Ginseng, reishi mushroom, which is a fungi, I know, but it has polysaccharides in it. These are polyphenol type compounds that are also heavily present in oats, like beta-glucans and stuff like that. These are plant defense chemicals as well, but these are also scientifically verified to be the active constituents, supposedly. This is a reductionist way of viewing medicinal compounds in plants, but being the main reason why these plants are so beneficial for humans, okay? And then we have something like rhodiola rosea, which many people swear is a life changer, okay, including myself. It's literally like a root that grows at high elevations, and basically the root itself, it's called Arctic root or whatever, rhodiola rosea, it literally creates a hormetic response to the high elevation where there's low oxygen or whatever in the environment, and it's super cold up there and stuff like that. The plant creates defense chemicals as a hormetic response to its environment to protect the plant from its environment, and that is actually what creates some of these medicinal compounds. We have like tyrosol derivatives, rosavins, salidrosides, and these are found in the rhodiola root, in the rhodiola plant. And when humans consume these hormetic compounds that are from the plant literally created it to protect it from the environment, and humans consume it. The studies, the intervention trials show lots of profound benefits on fatigue and improvements in adaptation to stress and insomnia and blood pressure and all sorts of things, depression, anxiety. And improving endurance and adaptation to exercise, improving, endogenous antioxidant systems. This is not like broccoli and broccoli sprouts and, whatever else, grapholryanin or whatever from freaking broccoli sprouts like Rhonda Patrick talks about. And if you're talking about plant defense chemicals and you haven't listened to Rhonda Patrick's stuff, even if you disagree with it, and then her mentor Bruce Amines, who literally wrote one of the fundamental research papers on naturally derived pesticides and plant foods that are like 99% more potent or something than artificial pesticides. If you're not familiar with that work and you're over here just like repeating shit Paul Saladino said, then what is wrong with you? Like, it really bugs me when people just go around making absolute statements about things that they don't really have a deep understanding of. They just It's like, it's really bothers me. I'm over here, I listen to all these motherfuckers, including Paul Saladino, read their books, read their research papers, and I'm extremely well read on a lot of these polyphenol compounds as well. And like, then you have these people just spreading misinformation, and it's really crazy. And also we got to understand, like, misinformation is a stupid term, but basically, it's possible that some of these plants might be harmful in some contexts for some people, but to just say indefinitely that these are bad for all humans it reminds me of these vegan people who are like, meat will rot in your intestine, and like, go vegan because of, acidity, and this vegan detox bullshit. Meat is toxic and you got to detox the meat. And then when people have negative symptoms from like a raw vegan diet, their eyeballs start like shedding or something. They get crystals coming out of their eyes and they lose their periods. They start coming up with crazy justifications. They're like, it's a detox, bro. Like 10 years later, and they're like dying, and they're saying that like it's a detox symptoms from all the meat you ate. And they're like, 20 years of eating meat requires like 30 years of detoxing at a deep cellular level. You gotta just deal with it. And they're like dying of nutrient deficiencies. So it reminds me a lot of like these carnivore people, even if you think fruit is healthy and whatnot still, who are like suffering. And you'll see this in carnivore communities. They're like, it's like every little problem people have. Usually people will come with like basic sodium deficiency symptoms. And these people, a lot of them are against sodium supplementation because they have a misunderstanding of the sodium requirements of, human ancestors. And they'll be like, it's detox. It's what is the word that Sally Norden talks about? God damn it. How could I forget? Oxalate. Is it oxalate? Yeah, oxalate dumping, bro. It's the same freaking paradigm that these vegans come from. And but they think it's different. And it doesn't surprise me that a lot of these things come from people who were crazy brainwashed vegans, and now they're just crazy brainwashed carnivore people, and it's crazy. And I'm someone who regularly says, hey, bro, like, you go on a carnivore diet, it can heal a lot of your problems, or at least, like, the symptoms, right? Get rid of your symptoms. And I very frequently, like, pretty much the majority of the time, eat mostly meat. But occasionally I'll throw some broccoli in there just for texture and minerals. I actually do really think the minerals and the vitamin C in some of these like non-starchy vegetables, especially if you boil them, are very beneficial. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of keto people actually tend to benefit from them. But anyway, where was I going with this? So I'm just like, there are a lot of plants that when humans consume them, like, first of all, the research does not back up the idea that plants are mostly toxic. You see quite the opposite picture. Not to say that plant foods are completely benign, okay, because they harm certain people. But certain plants have polyphenols that are highly beneficial, like my gynostemma tea I'm drinking right now, guayusa tea, yerba mate, and then green tea, and just like the Camellia sinensis plant in general. Cordyceps mushroom, reishi mushroom, rhodiola. And for some people, ashwagandha. Okay, but that is a very nuanced and deep rabbit hole. But this person left a comment on my damn ashwagandha video just saying ashwagandha will fuck you up, and just speaking in general terms, not considering the fact that it depends on the extract and the form and the dose and the person and what they're trying to take it for. Not to say ashwagandha is, like, again, harmless. It actually does fuck a lot of people up and has some pretty problematic effects on the thyroid. This person was going on about serotonin. It's like ashwagandha can actually cause a hyperthyroid crisis in some people that are completely healthy. Serotonin is not the major concern. Serotonin is the concern when you have a depressed person who's trying to treat their depression with ashwagandha, and then it makes their depression worse, and then they quit ashwagandha and they claim that they claim that they have permanent depression 6 months later. Like, that's probably not the ashwagandha that did that. And that is not a common thing that happens to ashwagandha, but ashwagandha does commonly fuck people up, myself included. Side note, I kind of did like a 2-week experiment with ashwagandha again, and started off good, but eventually definitely spit my thyroid up. So I'll make another video about that pretty soon. But anyway, you know, vigorous experimentation, research, and really studying these things is important. And that's something that a lot of people lack. They just like repeat shit. They just believe something that they heard from someone who convinced them of something and go around and just repeat it. So the next thing on this is like, and the other thing is most studies show like you cook these foods, and basically a lot of the anti-nutrients are disintegrated. You sprout these foods and soak these foods, the anti-nutrient goes away. A good book to read on that is Sally Fallon. Her book Nourishing Diets talks about ancestral Paleolithic diets, including the Eskimos and the Maasai and stuff like that. And it talks about how they would prepare beans and tubers and stuff to make them usable. They would literally pound it to mush and process the plant foods for like days. But so there's preparation involved. What was going on about the damn Asian people, which I love. You know, I love Asian people. Obviously, it's just still. The point is, what I was trying to say is that white rice, okay, nutrient deficiencies were never a problem until white rice came about, okay. And so, what does that tell you about anti-nutrients? Like, brown rice does not cause nutrient deficiencies via the phytic acid and anti-nutrient content. Okay, but these people are trying to avoid anti-nutrients to maximize nutrient density and bioavailability, so they choose jasmine rice or white rice instead. And it's like, dude, like, if you just read a little thing on Wikipedia, for crying out loud, or the book Vitamania, or, you know, whatever, there was a documentary on the Discovery Channel about it, you would see that it's not brown rice and the phytic acid you need to worry about. It's the refining of grains that created these problems to begin with. And I made many videos. I have a whole article. It's called The Hierarchy of Carbohydrates that I wrote, where it breaks down the anti-nutrient content of each carbohydrate food and has tiers of different carbs. And fruit is like the beginning, and then tuber's the next one, and it goes and goes and goes. And so it's like, I'm not ignorant of anti-nutrients. It's just that they're not as big of a problem as people think. So the next thing the person said was like, well, maybe the anti-nutrients in these plants are not a problem for bioavailability. Like, maybe they don't like create nutrient deficiencies per se, because they don't. You just don't see that. You don't measure people's blood and see nutrient deficiencies on a whole food plant-based diet. Not to say that that's a good way to go, but you don't see, like, you know, foods that are really high in magnesium but have anti-nutrients, like broccoli, for example, causing magnesium deficiency, or people who are doing whole oats. You will see nutrient deficiencies of things like, you know, vitamin A is pretty common on vegan diets. They think they're getting it from the beta-carotene, but it's not the right form. You see that commonly, but when you're eating foods that have the right form of, like, magnesium, for example, and things like that, and you measure their hair analysis or whatever kooky tests that you use to, like, measure magnesium levels, because blood levels are not adequate, actually, you generally don't see these things come about, not in people who are eating whole foods, okay? I'm trying to get at. So then this person's like, well, maybe it's not a nutrient deficiency concern, but autoimmune issues. Like, you may not have autoimmune issues eating these foods right now, right? Because my thing is, like, if you have an autoimmune condition, you should avoid foods that trigger it. And so avoid a lot of these plant foods that might trigger your symptoms. But for a healthy person, you should be just fine, right? And this person's like, well, actually, no, like, these plant defense chemicals are actually the main cause of autoimmune conditions. And so you may not have it now, but you will if you keep eating these plant defense chemicals later down the line. So let me just remind everyone, the majority of people who come down with autoimmune conditions are people who are eating mostly refined foods, okay? And the majority of their nutrients are being, and I can assure you that, like, we have enhanced data supporting this. Like, people don't look at research, right? They're just, vomiting their, regurgitating their opinions that they consumed elsewhere. But we have enhanced data showing the primary source of calories in the modern American diet is actually from refined grain sources. And then secondarily from dairy, particularly cheese. So things like pasta, pizza, macaroni, and cheese. And then the third is actually chicken. And so what that shows, and of course there's red meat as well, but that's like later down the list. What that shows, though, is that most people in our society are not eating many plant foods whatsoever, okay? Even though they're not a high source of calories. I can understand that as like a rebuttal. But I don't think autoimmune conditions are primarily caused by plant defense chemicals. That does not make sense. The evidence does not support that. And for me in particular, I never had digestive symptoms, digestive problems or autoimmune symptoms or anything until a couple months after a pretty heavy round of antibiotics, or a couple heavy rounds of antibiotics actually, combined with coming off of medications I was on for like 10 years and a variety of other things. My diet was almost always refined sugar, refined carbs. It was pasta, Monster energy drinks, and then I would do I like to do meat with like sauce and cheese, which is a decent keto thing, I guess. But that was something I did years ago, back in like 2009, 2010, 2011, the couple of years before I developed an autoimmune condition, okay? And I actually found the more refined foods I was eating, actually, the worse and worse I got. So anyway, the research does not support this idea at all, that plant defense chemicals are a primary cause of autoimmune conditions. Although, again, it's pretty obvious if you're eating, plant foods or any kind of food that's triggering your autoimmune condition. Don't be stupid. Like, stay away from it. It's, that happens. All right? But, like, there's a reason why we have all these autoimmune paleo diets and the GAPS protocol and stuff like that. I made videos about my own experience with this problem. But to say that plant foods cause autoimmune conditions, so like I've heard Lauren Cordain make the case that saponins in potatoes can rip open the gut lining, or like solanine from like nightshade vegetables and peppers might irritate the gut lining. I can understand that. Like there's mechanistic data that might contribute to backing that up as evidence. What else? Like whole grains, like certain parts of the fiber might irritate the gut. Like there's a whole book on this. I bet you haven't read this book, Fiber Menace. Have you read the book The Fiber Menace? It talks about how a lot of these whole grains and these fibrous foods tend to destroy our gut health and our intestine and contribute to autoimmune diseases and stuff like that. Like, I'm really well read on the subject. I just think that when you believe a paleo diet is the best way to go, or you believe a freaking carnivore diet or a vegan diet or whatever is the best diet, and the most information that you have is from like one source, it's just too easy for you to just go crazy and like try to convert everyone and convince everyone, and your whole world is shaped around the idea that everything that guru that you believe in says is true. But, it's like, well, I've been there, I've done that, I've read his information. I still do. I love Paul Saldino, and I love his girlfriend, Animal-Based Bay or whatever. Like, pretty cool, like, couple kind of dynamic going on. I like that. But, working with so many clients, and really I've helped so many people resolve their autoimmune conditions through our consultations. And the majority of the time, it's like certain foods that, for whatever reason, are triggering an issue. They almost never, like I've had a client just recently who's noticed there seems to be a correlation between dairy intake and their insulin sensitivity as a type 1 diabetic. And that's a fascinating type of thing. I've had clients who literally just could not tolerate, like they had like four teaspoons of chia seeds in their morning smoothie, and it caused extreme irritable bowel syndrome. We just removed that, and their whole freaking problem resolved. Like little changes a lot of times breed big results. Never once have I had a client who's like, I have this severe, crazy condition, and it's almost always way more complicated in the person's head because they're living it than it is solving it. And it's like, okay, you have this complex health problem. Let's look at what you're doing, and let's change a little bit of things as we go on. And it's like little changes make a huge, huge difference almost always, okay? Over time, through trial and error. I've never, ever had someone who just had to go completely carnivore. Actually, I take that back. I have one person who suspected a histamine intolerance, and they found a mostly carnivorous diet seemed to solve it. But there seemed to be like trigger foods, and it mostly seemed to be a histamine issue with that person. But they've noted we added certain plant foods. I'm not going to say specifics, but we added certain foods with polysaccharides and things in them to improve the condition. So we started adding plant foods in to remedy their problems over time, and adding foods back in over time. Okay, using carnivore as a baseline elimination diet. Okay, so yeah, and another thing, saying that like non-starchy vegetables are like deadly, but fruits are okay. Like I understand like fruits are meant to be eaten and this and that. And also we got to keep in mind like broccoli and a lot of these plants we have in the grocery store, they're only available nowadays because we selectively hybridized them. They didn't really exist before, and we basically breeded their poisonous compounds out of them to make them consumable. But I don't think broccoli is a health food per se. I think gynostemma is. I think a lot of these medicinal herbs are. And I think polyphenols are not something you should just universally think are bad, just like people shouldn't universally think all polyphenols are good. However, fruits that people eat are very high in polyphenols, okay? And generally speaking, a lot of these are plant defense chemicals as well. Yet we give them a pass because we're like, well, they're meant to be eaten and, appeal to nature, basically. It's natural, therefore it's healthy. Instead of looking at data, which for fruit, actually, the Pure study showed fruit had a really positive benefit towards people's health, supposedly. Pretty good, it was associated with pretty good health outcomes, fruit was. Whereas most vegetables were not really that impressive, had like a neutral to negative benefit, if anything. So yeah, I mean, I think saying, polyphenols are just really, really good and you should just get as much polyphenols as you want or as much as you can in your diet is kind of stupid. And I think saying polyphenols are bad and plants don't want to be eaten and they're going to kill you and all this shit, I think that's also stupid. And I think it just depends on the person, what their intentions are, and why are you eating that food exactly? What are you expecting to get out of it? I've always told my clients, hey, plant foods, most of the evidence suggests there's no real need for them in your diet, but certain plant foods might be have a super benefit for you as an individual and your goals. If you don't want to eat salads to be healthy, you really don't have to. Whether you eat salads or not is not the most significant factor in your health. But if you want to include them for adherence, because a lot of people, the number one obstacle in the way of their health is just adhering to a decently healthy protocol. If I go and I tell my clients, hey, especially weight loss clients who don't have dire health problems, if I'm like, hey, fuck plants, they're going to kill you, they're going to fuck your ass up because of plant defense chemicals, bro. You know what I mean? And yeah, just eat meat and fruit, bro. It's I promote that mostly, right? It's my gimmick, right? That's my theme these days. people seem to know me for that now. Fruit, tonic herbs, lifting weights, yada yada, and meat and organs. But like I am pretty flexible, and so if my client wants some kind of bread or whatever, and they don't have like a really detrimental health problem, I'm not gonna grill them over it. I'm not gonna be like, you're probably gonna die, you know, because I just don't think humans are as fragile as a lot of these fucks will try to make you sound. So if you really want to believe that the human organism is that fragile, and you want to go around and you want to do this, you know, avoiding polyphenols and plant defense chemicals and shit, that's fine. But I think that there are longevity benefits, there are health benefits, there are benefits to your mental health and your well-being that you can experience immediately when you consume a lot of these plant foods, particularly the tonic herbs I like to talk about so much. And make another video about how I think longevity is actually created from polyphenols pretty soon in the future. But I just don't think a lot of these people are going to maintain this, like, you know, plant defense chemical free diet for a long time. I think they're going to get bored of it eventually. They're going to realize that they're being dogmatic and unnecessarily restricting certain foods that could possibly be beneficial. And eventually they're going to move towards where I've gotten to, hopefully one day, where they realize, oh, let's take a look at the actual science behind this. You know, and like, if you want to just look at mechanistic studies that can literally back up anything in a petri dish and be reductionist, like Paul Saladino, that's fine. And I love Paul Saladino's work, don't get me wrong. But yeah, so I'm just tired of people spreading this kind of unnecessary nonsense, especially when it's pretty clear from the things they're telling me they haven't actually studied it in depth, okay? You know, they're just, like, it's very obvious just repeating shit they heard. Like, oh, like, you know, high carb diet is too serotonogenic because you were on serotonin receptor blocking drugs. It's like, I don't know about this. Anyway, pardon me if I sound confrontational or hostile, or if I'm offensive, or what's the other word? Not derogatory. Like overly, like, what? There's a word for it. Whatever, I forgot the word. Dismissive. God damn it, there's a word for it. Condescending. Sorry if I sound condescending, but I just hear this all the time, and I feel like it lacks reflection. Like what's his name? Sferage. Sferage is like, man, garlic is a neurotoxin. It's like, yeah, I don't know about that, man. Like, I think the Mediterranean people of Crete, and a lot of these people, and even the Chinese and the Asians, Japanese, like, these people eat a lot of garlic in their diet, and they have the greatest health outcomes. Same thing with Hong Kong. Okay, garlic is a huge staple in their cooking. And you're out there, like, trying to say garlic is a neurotoxin and it'll fuck your ass up. It's like, you know, people like, you know, the carnivore crowd, they like to walk around and share the idea that Hong Kong, you know, they eat like 1.5 pounds of meat per day or whatever per capita, and they have the longest life expectancy in the world, and yet they fail to mention, well, look at all the white rice, the pasta these people eat. I believe that they actually eat a lot of like wheat noodles and stuff, and lots of garlic and lots of high omega-6 vegetable oils too, like peanut oil and stuff like that. And they have for the last 100 years. But, you know, no, they don't fixate on that. They're just like, yo, they eat all this meat. That's why they're, like, living this long or whatever. You know, or it's like healthcare maybe is improving their life because it's a wealthy area or whatever. And maybe the meat is not, like, ruining their longevity, but neither are all these other things. So, yeah, people don't understand how to interpret healthy user bias either. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to finish up my, you know, this is probably like my 10th mug of plant defense chemicals. And, yeah, I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning. I'm going to drink a shit ton more of tonic herbs and guayusa. I'm going to go and smash people in jiu-jitsu, all for the fun of it, obviously. I'm going to get smashed, too, by my training partners. I'll have a good day, make more videos, be productive. live an awesome life, and these plant chemicals are only going to make it better. And you can think what you want. Have a great day.